Right, Sean, I'm curious as you guys think about governance in general. The original question was around things like policies, which are very important. But if you want to add anything that we haven't talked to yet on the governance side, and also talk about how you control the quality of code that you're asking this thing to write. How do you go about that? How are you thinking about that?
You need to test it. You need to have tools for testing. Sorry,
I can't believe that would have come from you.
But in fact, this is something that we've talked about a lot internally. That and again, it gets back to like these tools are going to make us all like more productive. And the burden of that is, as you have more things, you have more things to check. Hopefully, we will give you tools to do that checking and validation, at least at pace. But we're probably not going to be able to like help you get way out in front, because now you've got stuff. I don't know if everybody talks about things going from left to right. It's a big thing in like the testing and development organization, but stuff's going to be coming from the left like way faster, and you're going to be trying to get more done there. So it's going to be some of it's going to be testing. Some of it's in the actual application. It's just make sure it compiles, which oftentimes it doesn't the first time.
There's certainly gradations of risk. I think as you push it more towards generating test cases and the like, there's perhaps less risk than taking code generated or modules generated by them, because the nature of the test component is a little less proprietary in that respect. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about, is how to manage this. And one of the strategies for that is to annotate and maintain the provenance of any code that you take from the generator and incorporate into a product, so that you can identify it readily should copyright issues ever arise, should any other controversies of ownership arise. You can identify it, replace it with relative ease.
That look crazy.
Yeah. And that applies to content generation for web pages and textual materials as well, because the last thing you want to do is incur a legal risk over a direct copy of someone else's work because the machine wasn't smart enough to tell you it belonged to someone else.
That's right. I mean, adding to both of your comments, Cody and John, there's three things that comes to my mind when it, how do you validate that it produced the right code, right? So before getting in there, how do you validate that it produced a secure code? This is the one that we lose sleep with every day. So to me, it begins with any code that it produced. You need to go through a security review first, and using the secure code review practices, Cody talked about, we really need to use the tools to validate it. There are a variety of tools that exist. Organization is sure already using it, already practicing it, right? Qualys is one of them. There are several tools exist like that. Make sure that any AI generated code goes through the tool, not on an occasional once in a quarter perspective, right? On every build, every check-in, every time you run a pipeline, make sure that the AI generated code goes through the automated tool, detects any type of security leaks, security holes associated to that. So that's the first one. Second, if we decide to use AI generated tool, Copilot, or any type of OpenAI technologies, right, then we really need to lock it down ourselves with our agile practices, right? That starts with, do we have user acceptance criteria associated to the user stories, right? Those user acceptance criteria signed off by your product management organization or not, right? That clearly called out, here is my expectation, here is what I expected it to behave. Then you can utilize the LLM to produce the code as well as to produce the tests as well, right? If you use the behavior-driven development test methodology approach, it can also produce the seed script for you, seed data for you, it can produce the BDD tests, karate or cucumber for you. In addition to that, it can also produce the actual functional code too, but then you create that star network to make sure it is secure code. Second, ensure you have the right acceptance criteria, code is secure, acceptance criteria in place, and the BDTs that it generated can confirm that it produced the right outcome. You really have a quality code in place. And the last thing that is left is the IP infringement. That's something we just have to work through. It's so new right now. I don't have a good answer today on what that is going to look like, but I think that's what it needed to evolve.
Yeah, I really like what John said about tracking provenance. I mean, I don't think we have great tools, but I think it would be really neat if, like, as Copilot were working, like, if there were a good notion of like, oh, here's what Copilot generated, here's what I annotated.
Yeah, I think there's a real utility in that in this space until things settle a bit more. And that's not just tracking the provenance of the code and where it came from, what tool, what version, and what prompts were used, but also the use case that it was satisfying, because you don't want to, if you have the full context, it's a much more defensible position to be in than if someone says, well, you just stole my code. Well, I didn't just steal your code. I was trying to solve this problem, and the machine gave me this as a solution to the problem. So there isn't, you have somewhat, something like a defense against a malicious appropriation of the
The
code.
machine did it.
That's right.
Well, that's why you're going to say, I got this from.
There's a T-shirt opportunity.
Yeah, that's
The
exactly.
machine did it.
I mean, this is very basic hygiene, but I love, I think you talked about, basically version control, right?
Yeah.
Like needing to track those things, like what was the prompt this time? Like, because you're probably going to iterate on your prompts. What was the version of GPT that I was using at that time? And because one thing to also, like, sort of adjacent to all that is the fact that these models are non-deterministic. Like, you can ask it the same question twice and get different answers. So factoring that, I don't have answers, but like factoring that into your like process is going to be tricky.
Yeah, no kidding.
Excellent point, excellent. Actually, I do have one quick comment to make on that. Excellent point you brought in that remind me of the code that is generated by AI. Do we have a copyright associated to that code, or who has the copyright associated to that code, right? Anytime in our offices, when our developers, engineering organization produces code, we have the copyright associated to that, right? We can also take the model produced by it or some unique attributes that we produced it, go to the patent office, even file a patent associated to that model. But if that model or any lines of that model or an attribute produced by AI, we don't have copyright associated to it. This is a debate in the industry right now. It's an unsolved question, but any time, anywhere, in case if you know the answer, I would love to hear. Anna, what have you done?
The Copyright Office's current statement is you can copyright everything that the machine didn't produce. So if you have machine-produced code in your code, you can copyright everything else. But the stuff that the machine produced, you can't, because it doesn't have human agent.